I didn't say a word. I didn't slam a door. I didn't send a single angry text. I just watched, I waited, and then I made one phone call that changed everything. My name is not important. What matters is that I'm 32 years old, I work as a structural engineer, and for the past 6 years, I have quietly paid for things I was never asked to pay for. My brother's rent when he lost his job. My parents' property taxes 2 years in a row. My sister-in-law's car repair after she drove through a flooded street and blamed the city. I never complained. I never brought it up at dinner. I told myself that's what family does. You give when you can, and you trust that the people who share your blood see you, really see you, even when they never say thank you. I was wrong about that. I know that now. But I didn't know it yet on the morning of my nephew's wedding. My brother Marcus had been with his fiancée Dana for 4 years. They were getting married at a venue outside of Nashville, a renovated barn on a private property. White string lights, long wooden tables, the whole thing. Marcus had asked me to be a groomsman 8 months earlier, and I said yes without hesitating. I was genuinely happy for him. Dana was good for him. She was steady where he was scattered, patient where he was impulsive. I liked her. What I didn't fully understand until much later was that Dana's mother, my future sister-in-law's mother, a woman I'll call my mother-in-law adjacent, though that phrase is too generous, had been quietly building a case against me for months. Not loudly, not in ways I could point to. Just small things. A comment here, a rearranged seating chart there, a story retold with the edges sanded down until it said something different from what actually happened. My son's name is Caleb. He was 9 years old at the time. His mother and I had separated 3 years earlier. No drama, no court battles, just two people who realized they had grown in different directions and decided to be honest about it before things got bitter. We shared custody. We were, by most accounts, doing it right. Caleb split his time between my apartment and his mother's house 20 minutes away. He was smart, quiet in the way that meant he was always paying attention, and he loved baseball with an intensity that made me laugh because I have never understood baseball in my life. I had told Marcus 6 months before the wedding that I would be bringing Caleb. Marcus said of course. He said Caleb was on the guest list, that there would be other kids there, that Dana's cousins had children around the same age. I had no reason to question any of it. 3 weeks before the wedding, I got a call from my mother. She sounded careful, which should have been my first signal. My mother is not a careful person. She is warm and loud, and she laughs at her own jokes before she finishes telling them. Careful is not her register. She told me that Dana's mother had raised a concern about space at the venue. She said the venue had a strict capacity, that some adjustments had been made to the guest list, and that it might be better if Caleb stayed home that weekend. I asked her what she meant by adjustments. She said some of the children's seats had been reassigned to accommodate Dana's extended family. I asked her which children. She paused. She said she wasn't sure of all the details. I told her I would follow up with Marcus directly, and I got off the phone. When I called Marcus, he didn't answer. He texted me 20 minutes later. Dana's mom is handling the logistics. It's complicated. Can we talk after the rehearsal dinner? I sat with that text for a long time. I want to be clear about something. I was not angry yet. I was confused. There's a difference. Anger comes when you understand what's happening. Confusion is what you feel when the shape of something is wrong, but you can't yet name the shape. I kept turning the pieces over. My son had been invited. My son was on the guest list. My son had been looking forward to watching his uncle get married for months. He had already picked out his outfit, dark pants, a white button-down, and the clip-on tie I had bought him as a joke that he had decided was actually cool. The rehearsal dinner was on a Friday. I went. Marcus hugged me. Dana hugged me. Everything on the surface looked normal. I waited until we were standing near the bar, Marcus and I alone, for about 4 minutes, and I asked him directly, was Caleb still on the guest list? Marcus looked at his drink. He said Dana's mother had felt it would be better to keep the children's section small. He said it was nothing personal. He said maybe Caleb could come to the brunch the next morning instead. I asked him to look at me. He did. I asked him if he had seen the seating chart. He said yes. I asked him when Caleb's name had been removed. He said he didn't know exactly. I told him I needed to think, and I walked outside. The air was cool for September. I stood in the parking lot for 11 minutes. I remember checking my phone twice, and I made a decision that I have not once regretted. I went back inside. I finished the dinner. I smiled at the right moments. I clinked to my glass when someone made a toast. I did not say a word to Dana's mother, who sat at the far end of the table, looking satisfied in the way that people look when they have arranged things to their preference and are enjoying the result. That night, I drove home. Caleb was at his mother's. I sat at my kitchen table and I opened my laptop. The first thing I did was pull up my emails from the past 6 months. I'd been helping Marcus and Dana coordinate the financing for their house purchase. They were buying a property about 40 minutes outside of Nashville, a 3-bedroom with land, and they had run into some trouble with the down payment. I had agreed to co-sign a secondary loan, not give money, just co-sign, because my credit rating was strong and Marcus's was rebuilding after a rough period in his late 20s. I had signed the paperwork in March. I had trusted that everything was filed correctly. It was not filed correctly. When I went through the emails that night, I found a chain I had not been included on, between Dana's mother and the loan coordinator. The chain referenced the second document, an amended agreement I had never seen, that listed me as a primary borrower rather than a cosigner. The distinction mattered enormously. As a cosigner, my liability was secondary. As a primary borrower, I was on the hook for the full amount if Marcus and Dana defaulted. I read the chain 3 times. My signature was on the amended document. I had not signed the amended document. I want to tell you what that moment felt like. It is a specific kind of stillness that comes over you when you realize that someone has not just taken advantage of your generosity, but has calculated how to do it. It's not hot. It's not the kind of thing that makes you want to shout. It is cold and very clear, like standing in front of a window in winter and finally seeing the frost pattern for what it is. I did not call Marcus that night. I did not call my mother. I did not send any messages at all. I called my attorney at 8 o'clock the next morning. His name is not relevant. What is relevant is that he has handled contract disputes for 11 years, and when I described what I was looking at, he went quiet for a moment and then said, "That's forgery. That's not a civil matter. That's a crime." I told him to move carefully and quietly until I told him otherwise. Then I got in my car and I drove to pick up Caleb. His mother answered the door. We have a good relationship, civil, respectful, genuinely friendly in the way that takes real effort to build after a separation. She looked at my face and asked if I was okay. I told her something had come up and I needed to keep Caleb home this weekend. She didn't ask for details. She trusted me, which I was grateful for. Caleb asked why he wasn't going to the wedding. I told him I had decided we were going to do something better. He asked what. I told him I had no idea yet, but it was going to involve a lot of bad pizza and at least one movie he'd already seen. He thought about this for a second and said, "Okay, I want to stop here for a moment because this is the part people sometimes misunderstand when they hear a story like this. They think the hurt is about the wedding, about a seat at a table. And I will be honest with you. When I thought about my 9-year-old son and his clip-on tie standing at the door of a barn and being told there was no room for him, something in me went very quiet and very hard. That image stayed with me for weeks. It still does, if I'm being completely honest. But what broke the trust wasn't the seating chart, it was the document. Because the seating chart told me they didn't value Caleb. The document told me they had been calculating what they could take from me while making sure I stayed in a position where I couldn't easily say no. The wedding happened on Saturday. I was not there. I sent Marcus a text that morning that said, "I hope today is everything you've been looking forward to. I love you. I'll be in touch soon." He sent back a string of question marks. I took Caleb to a minor league baseball game 3 hours away. It was overcast and slightly cold, and the home team lost badly, and Caleb ate 2 hot dogs and said it was one of the best days of his life. I took a picture of him in his seat, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, completely absorbed in something happening on the field that I could not follow. I looked at that picture later and I thought, this is what I'm protecting. Not my pride, not my money. This exact thing. On Monday morning, I called my attorney and told him to move forward. We filed a police report regarding the forged signature on Tuesday. The loan coordinator was subpoenaed for records on Thursday. My attorney contacted the mortgage company to flag the discrepancy and request a formal audit of all documents bearing my name or signature. I also called my bank and began the process of removing Marcus from a joint account we had held since her father suggested it years ago. An old habit, a holdover from when Marcus was young and needed occasional support. I had never closed it because it had never seemed necessary. It was necessary now. I did not call my mother until the following Friday. By that point, Marcus had tried to reach me 11 times. Dana had sent 3 long text messages, alternating between confusion and anger. Dana's mother had, and I only know this because my mother told me, called my parents' house twice and spent a combined 40 minutes explaining that I was overreacting and that the seating issue had been purely logistical. When I spoke to my mother, I was calm. I told her everything: the seating chart, the document, the forged signature, the loan. I told her in order, slowly, giving her time to ask questions. She was quiet for a very long time after I finished. Then she said, "Did Marcus know about the document?" I told her I didn't know yet. She said, "What are you going to do?" I told her I was going to let the process work. That I had an attorney handling the legal side. That I was not interested in a conversation with anyone involved until that process was complete. She asked about the holidays. I told her we would cross that when we got there. What came next was a month of noise from every direction. My father called to tell me I was being extreme. An uncle I barely spoke to sent a Facebook message about family loyalty. Dana's mother left a voicemail, I still have it, in which she described me as vindictive and unstable, and suggested that my reaction to a simple seating decision was evidence of an anger problem. I listened to that voicemail once. I forwarded it to my attorney. The investigation established fairly quickly that the amended document had been processed through Dana's mother's connection to the loan coordinator. They had worked together previously, and the coordinator had made modifications without my knowledge or consent. Marcus, when formally interviewed, maintained he had not known about the forgery. My attorney believed him. I'm not entirely sure I do, but it doesn't change what needed to happen. The loan was restructured. My name was removed from the primary borrower position entirely. There are still legal proceedings I can't discuss in full detail. What I can tell you is that the mortgage on that house is now entirely Marcus and Dana's responsibility, which is how it should have been from the beginning. I did not attend Thanksgiving that year. I spent it with Caleb and his mother's family, who are loud and disorganized in the best possible way, and who spent 3 hours debating the correct way to make cornbread. It was the most normal I had felt in months. I did not attend Christmas at my parents' house either. My mother came to me instead. She drove to my apartment on Christmas Eve and sat at my kitchen table and drank coffee and told me she was sorry. Not on Marcus's behalf, not on Dana's behalf, on her own behalf. For the careful phone call 3 weeks before the wedding, for the paused silence where defense of my son should have been. For every moment she had chosen to manage the peace instead of saying the thing that was true. I told her I wasn't angry at her. She said she knew. She said that was almost worse. Caleb came out of his room, in his pajamas, and sat between us and asked my mother if she wanted to watch a movie. She said yes. He picked something neither of us would have chosen, and it was completely fine. Marcus and I have spoken twice since then. The conversations were short and careful. The way conversations are, when both people are still deciding what they're building toward. I don't know yet if we get back to something real. I think that depends on things he has to decide, not things I have to decide. What I know is that I am not waiting on it. I am not sitting in a room being angry. I am not rehearsing speeches I'll never give. I am living my life, what I keep coming back to. The thing I turn over when I'm driving or when Caleb is asleep and the apartment is quiet is how long I let the imbalance exist, because naming it felt like the more dangerous thing. I told myself I was being generous. I told myself family is supposed to be complicated. I told myself that keeping the peace was a kind of love. It isn't though. It's just silence with better intentions. The peace I keep now is different. It has edges. It has a line around what I'm willing to carry and what I'm willing to let go. Caleb will never stand at the door of a family event and be told there is no room for him, not while I am paying attention. That is the one thing I am completely certain of. He asked me once, a few months later, whether I was sad about not going to the wedding. I told him no, that I had been exactly where I needed to be. He thought about that. Then he said, "Good. The game was better anyway." I laughed for the first time in what felt like a long time. He was right. The game was better. And I should have drawn that line a long time before I finally did. The only thing I truly regret is how long I waited.